DawgNation, and welcome into DawgNation at Large. I'm Kaylee Mansell with DawgNation insider Connor Riley, who I can't even really look over at you right now because I'm not going to be able to take you seriously. Happy day before Halloween, everyone. Do you want to explain yourself?
Yeah, I'm a revolutionary. This is our Halloween episode. I'm Ghetto Pat from the Paul Thomas Anderson movie, One Battle After Another, Leonardo DiCaprio's character. If you might know out there, Mexican hairless, Viva la Revolucion. Just, we're getting in the Halloween spirit, and this is a pretty easy, generic white guy costume to pull off. I joked before coming in here, like you could say I'm a big city white guy hipster, and that passes for this as well.
I was going to say, I feel like you look like a character that exists in every single movie somehow, some way. You could pass for a million different things. Connor really went all out. I'm just the greatest trash talker to ever exist. Can't see the number. This is Larry Bird, one of my all-time favorites. So I went low effort, but I still think that it makes an impact. So glad that we're celebrating this. Now, there is something that I wanted to show you. Now, we go through the game notes each week. I'll give our producer, Jay Black, credit for finding this. I spent all week preparing for our DawgNation game day show that's going to take place on Saturday, and even with the worst SEC teams, you can usually find something that they're pretty decent at, maybe in the top 3 within the SEC. For Florida, it has been an absolute struggle to find something to compliment them on. But Florida found a way to give themselves some credit on their Florida game notes. This was on page 1. It's a little bit small, so I'm going to have to read it to you. On the Florida game notes, they said, the UF defense has been borderline elite through 7 games, ranking 34th in the FBS in scoring defense and 43rd in total defense. Additionally, the UF defense ranks 8th in the FBS in first down defense, 31st in rushing defense, 52nd in interceptions, and 67th in passing defense. If anyone ever called me borderline elite, I think I would be happy with that. But the fact that they had to put borderline in front of it, that tells you everything you need to know about this Florida defense.
Yeah, I guess the border is quite large for Florida in the way they're considering it there. Because I don't see anything that they're really ranked in the top 20, which I would consider very good. And then top 10 for me is the definition of elite. Now, Georgia doesn't have exactly a whole lot to hang their hat on, but I think they have a better, more strict definition of what elite looks like.
Like, at least when we went through the Alabama game notes and found something about the white jersey record, it was tucked away, middle of the packet, very small corner. This was on page 1 for everyone to see. Like, they were not trying to hide it. So I guess maybe that's the pride of this Florida Gators team right now.
It's a tough time to be a Florida Gator fan.
All right, it is Georgia-Florida week, one of my absolute favorites. I'm so excited. We took a break last week, back in studio with Connor, so why don't we go ahead and get to it? It is DawgNation at Large.
It's the show for the new breed of Georgia Bulldog fan. This is DawgNation at Large with DawgNation insiders Connor Riley and Kaylee Mansell.
First of all, I just want to acknowledge, I can't even believe that we're here at this point. Like, at this game, where we're at in the season, 5 games left in the regular season. Who knows what happens from there, but I feel like in some ways, this one has gone by faster than any other season I've been a part of. I know you've got a lot more under your belt than I do, but I didn't know if you had the same way.
I'm not that much older. Yeah, but November starts on Saturday, which is a wild phrase. We're in a nut crunching time, biggest games of the season. Georgia's got 5 more games left in the season. After Saturday, they'll be 75% of the way done with their SEC schedule.
That is so crazy. It's just been pedal to the metal. Maybe it's been the type of games that they've played, the emotional roller coaster that it's been. And so I'm just proud to have been a part of it. And the focus of today's show, I mean, we could have gone a million different ways for this rivalry game, but we're going to focus it all in on Gunner Stockton. He's the difference maker on this team, and for a game like this, it means everything to him. So lots of Gunner Stockton talk. Then also we're going to do our Dog Bite segment where we'll cover a variety of topics, including talking about Chauncey Bowens, maybe the potential rise of a young wide receiver, and I can't wait to talk a little bit about Brian Kelly with you. We haven't got to do that offset much, so I'm excited to discuss that. We'll also have our favorite memes of the week. We're going to do Name That Dawg with a very, very special guest on the show. And then touchdown predictions. I wish I could have forgotten that over the bye week, but it just lingers in the back of my mind constantly because the performance has been just about like Florida's defense, borderline elite. All right, so we're going to do some Gunner Stockton talk. But before we do that, there is something that I would like to do. And as the eldest daughter in my family, I want you guys to realize how hard it is for me to admit when I am wrong about something. Mm-hmm. But I owe Gunnar Stockton an apology, because before that Ole Miss game, I thought we had seen all there was to see from Gunnar. Now, of course, you can grow and improve a little bit through the back half of the season, but I just thought we had seen all that there was to see from him. That was not the case against Ole Miss. He went shot for shot with Trinidad Chambliss, and so I felt like I needed to come on here and tell Gunnar Stockton, I apologize. I wasn't familiar with your game, and now the way that we're going to speak about him through the rest of this is going to be totally different than it was going into Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think the Ole Miss performance changes the way I think everybody has to view Gunnar Stockton. He played well on the road at Tennessee and deserves credit for that, but seeing it a second time leads you to believe that maybe he's getting closer to being more consistent in that regard. And going toe-to-toe, like you mentioned, against Ole Miss in a game where Georgia's defense didn't play well, and he kept them not only in that game, where there was a chance, they fell behind 35-26 in the third quarter, but he kept going there. And, 5 touchdowns, 5 incompletions, beat them with his legs, beat them with his arms, did everything you'd want to see from a quarterback in that game, and did it all while playing hurt. So the time to question Gunnar Stockton, I think, has largely come to an end in terms of, what does he bring? Is he an additive player? Is he a force multiplier in that aspect? I think that he so clearly is. And, again, the thing that, even if you go back and listen to some of the things we said, we noted that Gunnar Stockton throughout the season was getting better. He was making incremental improvements in terms of, keeping his eyes downfield when throwing the football, deep passes that you saw pretty consistently. That's something that was in his bag. But against that Ole Miss team, you saw him make guys miss in the running game, be decisive when he took off, avoid taking hits, which was really important given he was playing through an oblique injury. And then you see really attacking the middle of the field. That, to me, was the biggest difference in how he played previously to that Ole Miss game. I just didn't think that was something that was a strength of his. You saw the tight ends get very involved. I think there's something to that tied into, Georgia being able to use their tight ends, attacking the middle of the field, when so far they have largely been a perimeter outside the numbers type of offense. And if they're able to mix and match this and use all 53 yards of the football field, horizontally speaking, it's going to make them even more difficult to defend, which is why I think you saw Ole Miss have such a hard time, because it didn't matter whether they were attacking outside with Zagoria Branch or attacking over the middle with the tight ends. Ole Miss couldn't really do a whole lot in that game.
And because of his performance against Ole Miss, not only did Gunnar Stockton prove us wrong, but I think everyone in the national media too, because the noise for Gunnar Stockton in the days to follow was so loud. You're seeing him pop up on lists everywhere, but now that it's come to Georgia-Florida week, I don't feel like we're hearing as much about Gunnar Stockton, because now this game has really been shaped around it's Florida's first game without Billy Napier coming out of the bye week. How are they going to adjust to not having him? So maybe just not as much Gunnar Stockton talk, because the storylines have been overshadowed with something else. But this is the time to really start locking in on him, because clearly we see that he can be the difference maker in a game like this. Not even just this game, but the entire season.
Right, and we had planned sort of to make this show about Gunnar on Wednesday, and then Thursday morning the story drops on ESPN. Mark Schlabach reporting why this game in particular has such a special meaning to Gunnar Stockton. His grandfather passed away at the age of 63 while attending the 2010 Georgia-Florida game. I found it very interesting. Since that game, going through that game, Florida was on an 18-3 run in terms of the rivalry in the way that it had gone. Since that 2010 game where Gunnar Stockton's grandfather unfortunately passed away with a heart attack at the age of 63, Georgia's 10-4 in this rivalry, and Saturday is going to be his first time and his only time in his career to start in Jacksonville for this game. He talked about wanting to beat Florida bad, specifically in Jacksonville. I think that only heightens this game for Gunnar. We saw earlier this year the impact of that Auburn game where his grandfather had some history there as well. And we know family is so important to Gunnar Stockton, and I think that story just sort of touches on and really helps explain who Gunnar is and why he is the perfect Georgia quarterback, because, he's not going to be a first-round draft pick, and he doesn't have the tools that scouts and deep football people all really look for. But this guy's pretty clearly a great college quarterback, has a great college story, and the fact that it is so Georgia, I think, makes it all the better, and it's all the more encouraging for how he's been able to lead this Georgia team, and why I think Georgia in particular responds so well to Gunner Stockton and everything that he's done this season.
Yeah, and I mean, if you haven't read the article, I would 100% encourage you to do so. Definitely had some eye sweat reading that because I didn't even know that story. But I think what also makes it more special about him playing in this game is he might be one of the few players on this team that understands the rivalry and the history of it. And I know that Kirby Smart and several other players were asked about that earlier this week, and maybe they kind of downplayed the situation. But Gunner, being from the state of Georgia, growing up a Georgia fan, he understands the value in this game. And it's almost similar to like Jake Fromm. Like Jake Fromm had some good performances at Florida, but growing up in the area, especially right there in the middle, South Georgia, a lot of Florida fans. So I think just having that tie and understanding what this game means, like that could work in Gunner's favor and have the team rally around him even more.
First of all, I feel compelled to admit Houston County is not South Georgia.
I said middle to south.
That is
south.
That is clear middle Georgia. But to your point, like, and this is something we talked about in the pre-show, this Georgia-Florida game has gone on to, I think, in some ways define quarterbacks in the way that they are viewed here. And Jake Fromm was always great in these games, delivered big, especially in 2018. And then you think the moment 2019 where Kirby and him go head-to-head after that game because it meant so much for Jake to play well in that game and play as well as he did. Stetson Bennett, never really played great against Florida. And I think that was something that led to a lot of people asking questions about Stetson. And you think, he hurt his shoulder in the 2020 game. It's the last time Georgia lost in this rivalry. They won because of their defense in 2021 and 2022 and the way that they played in those games. And I think that's why for so long, so many people had questions about Stetson. And then really with Carson back, yes, he played well in that 2023 game, but that 2024 game, I think, was the worst game that Carson had played. And look, he's a Jacksonville guy. It meant a lot to him to play in that stadium. But I think that game brought out the worst in Carson because he was pressing so much, because he was trying so hard, because the game meant so much to him. I think it overloaded him a little bit. And him playing as poorly as he did in that game last year is why that game was so close. I think it's why people have talked themselves into some revisionist history around the way that game was played out. And so going into Saturday with Gunner, and we get the anecdote today about why this game is so personal to him, Gunner needs to go out there and play within himself. Mm-hmm. And I think Stetson and Carson sort of felt the pressure with this game, whereas Jake was always very cool, always very calm. You think back to that 2018 game, Georgia's coming off a loss to LSU in their previous game. There were a lot of calls for Justin Fields to be the starting quarterback for Georgia that day. I believe that Kirby went in there and said, Jake, you're either taking the ship down or whatnot, but we are not playing Justin in this game, and you're going to deliver us a win. And that's what he did over a ranked Florida team that year that I believe went on to go play in a New Year's Six Bowl. And so I think for Gunner, and Brandon talked with Jake earlier this week and about the need to play well in this game. I think Gunner leans closer to Jake, mentally, stylistically, than maybe perhaps he does with Stetson and with Carson.
Yeah, and definitely in terms of the leadership style as well. And I do think it's important to know, I know it gets confusing because who has COVID years and who has extra years, but this will be the only time that Gunnar Stockton will have the chance to start in Jacksonville before the game moves elsewhere. So I think that he finds meaning in that. And we're going to get into specifics, but there is one more thing I want to do because, this game makes people nostalgic. So let's get a little bit of nostalgia. Think back to the beginning of the season, all of the hype around DJ Lagway. People like Paul Feinbaum were saying that Gunner was going to decrease the value of this team. It wasn't going to be the same team without Carson Beck. And now I feel like what Gunner is in this moment is what everybody thought that DJ Lagway has going to be. The running stats have not been there for DJ as well, and it feels like now that maybe Gunner's getting some of that recognition that DJ got preseason. There's been jokes made about it. He has not even met the expectation. It's definitely been below that. So it's crazy to see how even really just halfway through the season, these storylines have really switched.
Yeah, I think it goes to show that, look, if somebody could figure out how to evaluate the quarterback position and know what's going to make a great quarterback and what isn't, we know who a really successful program would be. And you can look at Bill Belichick, who figured it out with Tom Brady, and then he can't really do anything at North Carolina. I think it just speaks to how hard it is to evaluate the quarterback position and how different it is for each guy. Because DJ Lagway, he has all the physical tools. He has everything you'd want and was a 5-star quarterback. Everyone thought he was going to be the next great thing. And he's been pretty poor this season. And he has not had the season he's had. He is a big reason, in my opinion, that Billy Napier is no longer the coach at Florida because he could not elevate his game and play to the level that Florida team needed to. Conversely, Gunner Stockton doesn't have any physical trait that really stands out. But I think he is an elite competitor, and I think he has a very sharp football mind. I think he does a great job of not turning the ball over, something DJ Lagway has struggled with mightily, not just this season, but last season too. And so for Gunner, it's sort of a sum of the parts thing. And that's why, again, I mentioned Tom Brady. I believe he's the greatest quarterback to ever do it. Tom Brady wasn't fast. He didn't have the rocket arm, but there was something internally about him that can't really be qualified that allowed him to go on to have the career that he had. And I'm not saying Gunner Stockton is Tom Brady. I am not going there. But there is that same sort of intrinsic whatever that we can't really qualify or we can't really figure out how to measure that I do think Gunner possesses in some way.
Here's the thing, though. We can criticize DJ Lagway in this moment because of what he's done so far this season. However, when you look back at Georgia's schedule, it feels like every SEC quarterback has their Heisman Trophy game against Georgia, and I feel like Florida's actually been the opposite. Even though the record doesn't reflect it, a lot of quarterbacks have not played well against the Florida defense this year. And Billy Gonzalez has not been shy about the fact that they are going to try to put as much pressure on Gunnar Stockton as they can, and even though he's improved, there are still some things that could get better. There are some obvious flaws, but when he's on, this Dawg team looks different. I mean, do you have any concerns about just, the borderline elite Florida defense or maybe this pressure that they plan on applying to him?
Yeah, Kaylee, I am a little bit older than you, and you've experienced a lot of success in this Georgia-Florida rivalry. But I'm old enough to remember 2014 when that was a Florida team that they were looking to fire Will Muschamp, and Florida went in that day and just pounded a better Georgia team. And then next year, 2015, where Georgia was favored in that game, people don't want to talk about it, the infamous Faton Bauta game, the game that ultimately brought the end of the Mark Richt tenure here at the University of Georgia. So weird things happen in this rivalry all the time. I believe Georgia is the better team. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Florida found a way to win on Saturday because that's just sort of the way that things have gone in this rivalry. Even for as successful as Georgia has been, the voodoo in Jacksonville, there's just something about it down there in the water on the St. Johns River.
I know that we saw Gunner throw the ball a ton against Ole Miss. Clearly, he's capable of doing that, but I do feel like where the advantage lies with him in this game is the RPO, is his legs, because apart from Mansell Reed, Florida really hasn't faced a true dual-threat quarterback, and in that Texas A&M game, Reed had 7 carries for 37 yards and a rushing touchdown, so I know they plan on applying pressure, but I think you test the defense early and let them scramble in those early drives.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a line that Georgia is looking for. 7 for 37 with a touchdown in there. Like, again, you don't want to run him, 10 times like you've seen them do at times. You want to keep him protected. You want to use him in a smart way. And they did that excellently against Ole Miss. And I'd be surprised if his legs aren't a big part of the game plan once again this time for Georgia on Saturday.
All right, so last thing, I think Jay said this pretty well, that after the Florida game, you know what you have in this Georgia team or what you don't have. When it comes to Gunnar Stockton specifically, are there any reservations about him that you think can be resolved within this game?
I don't think so. I think actually going into this game, we know who Gunnar is, where, he's not always going to light the world on fire. You're going to have your Auburn-type games. You're going to have a Kentucky game thrown in there where he just sort of keeps the offense on pace. He's not the guy that is, the Josh Allen superhero type. But when you need him to in those big moments, and I would think there's going to be a point on Saturday that classifies as a big moment, he has shown that he is someone that can step up and can come through, can make those big throws like we saw on the road at Tennessee early in the season. So again, it's not always going to be perfect. He's not going to throw for 450 yards and 6 touchdowns in a game, but he's going to keep this Georgia offense on pace. And I think with how the Georgia defense has played this year, I think that's very important in playing complementary football. And that's something Gunnar Stockton does very, very well.
So here in just a moment, we'll talk about some other Georgia offensive players that could have their big moment in the game on Saturday. But first, we want to remind you that here on DawgNation at Large, we are so excited to partner with Zagoria Law Firm. And what makes Zagoria Law Firm so unique is that they are the only law firm in the state that specializes in representing people who have been bitten by dogs, as well as those who have been knocked down by dogs. That's right, dog fans. They are the official dog bite injury lawyers of the Georgia Bulldogs. So if you or a loved one has been hurt by someone else's dog, give them a call at 833-GA-DOG-BITE, that's DOGBITE, or visit ZagoriaLaw.com. All right, now we'll do dog bites. Let's kick it off with someone who at one point in time was a Florida commit and then flipped midway through his visit during a photo shoot. That's the running back Chauncey Bowens, who probably benefited a lot from the bye week just in terms of getting back to full health. Now, Nate Frazier had improved in the games that Chauncey was limited, but I expect, I feel like Kirby does a good job of getting guys the ball when it's kind of their moment under weird circumstances. And just knowing the history of Chauncey Bowens in Florida, I feel like Kirby's going to find a way to get a Chauncey Bowens touchdown.
Yeah, I think this is maybe a twist the knife moment. And the big thing for Chauncey in this game, not only is he feeling healthy, the offensive line in front of him. This week was the first time all season Georgia didn't have an offensive lineman listed on the availability report that comes out. These guys got a week last week to heal up, to rest, to get healthier, to get in better shape, to find better combinations. And I think that this comes at a crucial time where obviously you can't predict health. Georgia started 6 different offensive line combinations in the first 6 games of the season. But if this group's able to stay healthy, I like the talent that they have. And if they're able to mesh something they just never did a season ago, I think that can only further help this rushing offense. I pulled a stat today. In all but one game this year, despite the offensive line issues that they've had, Georgia's rushed for 180 yards in all but one game, the Auburn game where Monroe Freeling did not start. Last year, Georgia rushed for more than 180 yards in a game once, and that came against UMass at the end of the year. So I think this rushing offense is very different. I think it's a lot better. I think Chauncey Bowens is in position to really capitalize on Saturday because of that.
So with Colby Young out, it's easy to assume that Noah Thomas is going to step into that role. But I kind of want to know where CJ Wiley fits into all this, because he definitely has that same frame, that same role. And as someone who played at Milton, won a state championship, like he's played some high-level competition in the state of Georgia. Do you think there's a chance that we may see more of CJ Wiley now that Colby Young is out?
Yeah, I think CJ falls into the bucket of, okay, like, yes, he's a freshman, but we're getting to the point in the year where you're not really a freshman anymore. I think having this off week beforehand gives you a chance to focus a lot on younger guys, get some younger guys more reps. CJ is someone I think on the offensive side really fits into that mold. I think Rayshawn Dinkins in the secondary at that defensive back position is someone who on the other side I'm interested in keeping an eye out for this week, because CJ Wiley, they like him a lot, and they know that going forward, because they had Colby Young and because they had Noah Thomas, and both guys were going to exhaust their eligibility after this year. This was sort of going to be, a learning year for CJ and see what can he do, how quickly can he pick things up, where next year you need him to be that big-bodied X receiver on the outside. Well, Colby Young's out, and you've got a chance where, yes, Noah Thomas is going to get a lot more of those snaps. I think they're going to get the tight ends more involved. But can CJ carve out, a little role where, similar to Elias Williams at the tight end position, he's playing 5-10 snaps a game. Maybe he gets one target because Georgia dials something up for him, maybe like they saw Talon Taylor do in the Alabama game earlier this year. So I'm interested in seeing coming out of this week with this Florida game, do we see anything out of CJ Wiley, and can he sort of, make that jump in the middle of the season, where I'm not expecting him to be a big-time part of the Georgia passing offense, but somebody who can contribute.
Yeah, I think back to last year's game when Dwight Phillips Jr. had that touchdown, and I mean, I don't even know if we saw Dwight Phillips Jr. before that, and so I feel like maybe CJ Wiley's the player that has that moment where they had the touchdown, and it's like, well, where's this person been the whole time, and the whole team was so excited. So even if it's not CJ Wiley, I would like to see another Dwight Phillips Jr. type situation, because you could tell that was just like a big morale boost for the team.
Huge. It meant a lot to that team to see him come through and score as a true freshman in that game.
Okay, so Connor does know this. I'll tell you guys. I went to bed at like 7 o'clock on Sunday. I was totally wiped. I knew that we had a big week ahead of us, so I was like, I'll just go ahead and go to bed early. I wake up. I love a slow morning. I did not know till I got to work the next day that Brian Kelly had been fired. You can imagine my shock. I was like, somebody should have woken me up or called me, because this is humongous news. I guess we're really just going to talk about kind of what went wrong. And I really think it comes down to he was never a culture fit in that moment. And yes, we can joke about the opening press conference when he brought the accent out, but like, think about Coach O, too. When he left, like, people were sad to see him go. They understood, but that was a guy who could just visibly tell absolutely loved the program. Brian Kelly didn't have those same Louisiana ties, and so, I don't know. I just don't think it was a culture fit to begin with, and after that first year, I just don't know if it was ever going to work out for the Tigers and him.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree on the culture aspects of it. You think Nick Saban, who he came in there, he was a West Virginia native who was working at Michigan State beforehand. Les Miles was at Oklahoma State. They didn't necessarily fit the, southern Louisiana man mold. But what I do think that Miles and Saban understood was the difficulty and how hard this job is. And Brian Kelly, I don't think ever fully anticipated that. I think he thought coming from Notre Dame, which I do believe is a more difficult job than LSU, he would simply walk in, get the players that he needed, and it'd be just off and running. And he never anticipated this being as difficult as a job it is. As Kirby Smart says every week, it is hard to win in the SEC. I think Brian Kelly grossly underestimated how difficult that was, and that showed up by him not putting in the hard work, not doing the things that needed to be done to be a successful coach. And this is maybe where there is some overlap with the culture. Not, emphasizing the state of Louisiana enough, where I think even more than Georgia, because Atlanta is such a transient city and you have a lot of people from all over the place. LSU has a massive recruiting advantage because they put so many elite players out of the state of Louisiana, where, those kids grow up wanting and dreaming to go to LSU in a way that, certainly in the metro Atlanta area, I don't think kids do the same way with Georgia. And he just never tapped into that. And that's an example of, he thought this job would be super easy, and I think he grossly underestimated what was required for him to be great in this job.
Yeah, I think you make a good point about not putting in the work, because LSU is a team that should be a national championship contender every single year, because the resources that he has, unlimited. The funds, unlimited. Everybody knows that LSU is the best place to play at on the road at night. I feel like LSU got a million night games in his time. And so maybe it just the work wasn't being put in, because LSU is a coaching job where you have every single resource at the drop of a hat.
And I think that's what he misidentified. He thought, this be an easy job, and he didn't put in the work required. Like Nick Saban, yes, Alabama and LSU are great jobs, obviously. But what made Nick Saban so special at those jobs, what makes Kirby Smart so special at Georgia, is not only do they have those resources, but those guys are absolute maniacs in terms of the way that they attack things, in terms of the way they look for advantages. And Brian Kelly, a little bit older of a coach when he got hired, had already worked a big-time job at Notre Dame. That was just never the case with him, and I think that's why LSU is going to look for something very different in their next head coach.
All right, so one more quick question, and then we will move on. You think Brian Kelly will retire after this happily with a big buyout, or do you think one of these schools that's now a part of the coaching carousel will come in and pick him up?
I could see him coaching somewhere else again. I think he still wants to win a national title. I still think he wants to compete, but when the last two jobs you've had are Notre Dame and LSU, I think you grow accustomed to certain things. And, is he going to want to take the Virginia Tech job? Is he going to want to go be the head coach at Arkansas? I don't really think so. And so fit, ironically, with Kelly is why he might sit this next one out. And maybe, take a year off and find something better a year from now.
So speaking of the coaching carousel, the domino effect, it's not just head coaches, it's assistant coaches, it's coordinators, and I feel like Kirby Smart has done a really good job of locking in the majority of his coordinators. A year ago, we would have said that Glenn Schumann was a shoe-in for any of these jobs. I feel like that's really not the case anymore, but are there any other coaches on this Georgia staff that you think could be poached by other schools?
Yeah, I think Schumann's going to be real interesting, especially if Tulane head coach John Sumrall ends up getting, maybe the Auburn job if that comes open, maybe the Ole Miss job if Lane Kiffin leaves. I think Glenn Schumann, you think of someone, where I don't think he's getting a high-end SEC job. I don't think he's going to be able to make the leap that, say, Dan Lanning made when he became Oregon's head coach, because again, remember Lanning, while everyone loved him and and Schumann have a lot of the same intangibles, Lanning was leading that 2021 Georgia defense, which is a far cry from what we are seeing right now. So I think there's a hesitancy to give him that big time job. Could he get maybe an Arkansas? Could he get a Virginia Tech? Maybe potentially, but I think they're going to want to go in a different direction there with Schumann. The guy that's interesting to me to keep an eye on is Todd Hartley, who I think has hit a little bit of his ceiling here at Georgia in terms of if he wants to continue to be upwardly mobile in terms of getting a new job. He's not going to be the offensive coordinator here anytime soon. And it's really going to be, what does Todd want to do? And I think he does ultimately one day want to be a head coach somewhere. And look, Georgia should be thrilled to have him as their tight ends coach. He keeps landing dudes. He's getting very close to that Del McGee territory. And I mentioned McGee. He eventually left to take the Georgia State job. That was a difficult job, but it was kind of a now or never thing of, do you want to be a head coach at the college level? McGee did. Georgia State's 4-16 since he took over there. It hasn't exactly gone the way I think anybody involved with Del McGee would hope, because a lot of Georgia people really love him. And so I think with Todd, last year, I know the Southern Miss job was something that he sort of craved and went after. Is there a lower tier group of 5 job where Todd can really earn his stripes a little bit? And I'm not even saying like a Tulane or a UAB, which has already come open, but something like a Conference USA job that potentially comes open. And that's maybe somewhere where he finds a way to be a head coach, because he's been here long enough. And I do believe he has all the chops to run a program, but the question is just going to be opportunity and whether that comes up.
Yeah, I would say something like Kennesaw State maybe, but they don't need one because they're bowl eligible. I got to give a shout out to my alma mater. That's so exciting to see. All right, last thing, other game we're looking forward to. And now, we go through these shows week by week and you have to tell yourself, oh, it's still early. It's still early. Not anymore. Every game that happens from here on out all affects the end result, especially when it comes to the SEC championship. So for me, other game I'm looking forward to is the one that shapes this conference rankings the most, and that is Oklahoma and Tennessee, because one of these teams is going to lose this game and more than likely be out of the college football playoff. I don't know if at this point anybody can make the SEC championship with 2 losses just from where we stand. But what I think it's going to be crazy is, like last year going into that Georgia Tech game, we already knew that Georgia was going to play in the SEC championship. I do not think that's going to be the case this season. It is going to come down to that final Saturday rivalry weekend, and then we're going to know. But just looking at the slate, I think that this is the one that kind of shapes the end result the most.
I'm actually going to go outside the SEC. I got a runner-up. Miami going on the road to SMU. It's the first time all season that Miami has left the state of Florida. Coming on, they beat Stanford last week, yes, but against Louisville, who I think is closer to SMU than Stanford is. They didn't play very well in that game. Going on the road, it's an early start. We know SMU made the playoff last year. They're coming off a real tough loss to Wake Forest. Miami's got to be careful in this game, because if they get to 2 losses, especially 2 ACC losses, I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, and that'd be very disappointing for them. But the big game that I am looking forward to, there was a little bit of news right before we came on here. Matt Rule actually signed an extension to stay at Nebraska, I think effectively taking himself out of the Penn State business. Now, I think with the way Nebraska has played lately, maybe he took himself out of the Penn State business. But Nebraska's hosting USC this week, and these teams both already have 2 losses. And I think if one of these teams can get to 10-2, that might open the door for a 4th Big Ten team to get in the playoff. And I think these are the 2 best options, because I think Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana, should they all continue to take care of business, will be locks in that regard. I think one of these teams, USC, Nebraska, even though it might not seem that way right now because they both got 2 losses, I think there's a world that one of these teams finds themselves very much in the thick of playoff conversation come later November.
Since you brought up Miami, can I go ahead and make a prediction on the show right now? I was kind of talking about it with Jeff yesterday. Say that Miami does find a way to sneak into the playoffs. So does Georgia. The committee is going to set it up to where either these teams play in the first round or have the potential to play in the second round, because it doesn't look like either of these teams are capable of winning a national championship at this point. So they're not going to put them on opposite sides of the bracket. For TV ratings and storylines, they're going to match it up to where they play first round or second round.
Remember, the college football playoff is an entertainment decision, an entertainment business. I think that's why a few years ago you saw Alabama get into the playoff over Florida State. Entertainment value matters in this sort of thing. So maybe there's a world where, hey, Georgia's the 6th seed and Miami is the 11 because they're not their conference champion. First round game in Athens. Carson Beck coming to Athens in the middle of December. Say less.
That's what I'm saying. The storylines write itself, the headlines, they're going to make it happen. So I just wanted to go ahead and get that out in the air, even though it is kind of predictable. All right, so we've got Meme Machine coming up. Also a very special interview with a very special guest. We've been holding on to it. But first, we got something really exciting coming up for DawgNation. Gonna finally do an in-person event. It feels like it's been forever since we've done this. It's gonna be at Terrapin Brewery in Athens. It's Thursday, November 13th from 6 to 9. It's a free event, but you do have to RSVP for it. So you can do that by going to DawgNation.com/on-tap. First beer is on Terrapin, and also free food provided by Cerchero. So really excited to be able to have that. And then big thing of the night, awesome giveaways, including tickets to the big game on that Saturday. That's the big one. So come hang out with us. We'll do some Q&A, talk some Georgia football. Also, really great beer. Get the first one on us and have some Cercheros. So DawgNation.com/on-tap to RSVP for the event. Oh, I'm so excited for this one. I never stray away from tweets, but I did for this week. This is Meme Machine.
Interesting.
Who's that coming down the track? Who's that coming down the track? It's the Meme Machine and Randy Black. It's the Meme Machine and Randy Black. Go, no! Go, no!
we're dressing up, apparently.
I thought you had like a whole box of stuff.
I usually do. I was not aware. So Connor,
aware.
I will tell you, we were sitting in the control room pre-show, and I saw you in there, and we're trying to decide what you were, because I have not seen this movie, which apparently is a new movie. Yeah. The first 5 words you said about it, I just didn't understand the movie, the character, all of that. It was a different language. So I was thinking like Jesse from Breaking Bad, because you're giving off those vibes a little bit.
Yeah, very similar.
I thought maybe he's just trying to be Pete Davidson. So those were my two thoughts. But I will go with, what did you say it again?
It's Ghetto Pat from One Battle After Another.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll have to see that one before. Maybe it'll be nominated for something.
I was saying, was it Oscar nominated?
Oh, this is going to be Oscar. It's the best movie.
Okay, then Cody's going to have to watch it. He watches all the noms.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
Yeah. Connor?
Who's first?
Kick us off.
Yeah, so I thought I was gonna be the only one in a costume. This is an all-time tweet. It is timeless. TBT to Halloween when I was dressed up as the Babadook, but my friend's house had more of a grown-ups drinking wine vibe. I've seen a few people, out at their office or around town who are getting in the Halloween spirit. And we're recording this on a Thursday, obviously, but I just love the people who get so into Halloween and they're forced to hang out and be around people that aren't into Halloween in the same way. I thought for sure when I submitted this that Kaylee wouldn't dress up and I'd be the only person here in costume. So I felt a little bit like the Babadook, but just truly an all-time tweet.
And the makeup is so good. It's perfect because it's like a little messy too. Oh, that's good. I like that. If you showed up to work like that today, like walking through this corporate building with all these important people dressed like that, I mean,
well, a little bit of a story time here because this is how it was reintroduced. So, because we are all usually working over Halloween weekend, we very rarely get to attend Halloween related events. And so my girlfriend is going to a Halloween party that our friends are throwing. And she was curious, what's the costume situation? Do we have to dress up? Because she was worried that she'd show up in her costume and then be the only one there in her costume. And so that's sort of how that started.
What's her costume?
She's going to go as Wednesday Addams.
Oh, that's good. Awesome. That's perfect. All right, Cody, what you got?
All right, so this brings in two things that we've been talking about. We'll check and see if Connor's done his homework, but also it has to do with a story you guys brought up earlier on the show. So here we go. Dave Wilson tweets basically the article that you guys were talking about where Gunner Stockton, and we are not trying to make fun of Gunner Stockton's father, Lawrence, but he passed away at the Gator game in 2010, Georgia, Florida. So the meme is, my name is Gunner Stockton. You kill my grandfather. Prepare to die. So Connor, have we seen Princess Bride yet?
Have not, but I am familiar with Inigo Montoya's work.
Inigo Montoya.
Yeah.
So there you go.
He was just looking it up on his computer.
I Googled it to make sure that I would properly pronounce his name. I knew his last name was Montoya. I was double checking to make sure. Confirmation. Inigo Montoya.
So when can we expect you to watch this? I feel like we need to give you a deadline.
February.
I mean, you just had a bye week.
I just had a bye week and I was on vacation.
Okay. All right. So like I said, for mine, I usually stick to the tweets. I saw this, I can't even remember when, and I almost wanted to send it to you, but I was like, no, I'm going to save it. Super nostalgic with everything that's happening right now with college football coaches. I think that just gives you a greater appreciation for Kirby Smart at the University of Georgia, and I thought this video did a really good job of reflecting that.
Ladies and gentlemen, the head football coach at the University of Georgia, Kirby Smart.
I don't think words can express how honored and privileged I am to stand before you as the head coach of the University of Georgia. Our teams will display great mental and physical toughness. We'll play with great confidence and pride on the field.
You feel a certain pressure to deliver a higher level of expectation right away?
No greater pressure than I put on myself, I can promise you that. Because that's the way it should be. You put pressure on yourself, you demand excellence of everybody in your organization, and we're going to go out there and have the intent of winning every game we play.
After 41 years, the University of Georgia are national champions. How does that sound to you?
I hope it doesn't take that long again. Go Dogs.
I mean, great cinema, by the way. Whoever edited that video, incredible. We're probably going to get copyrighted. It was totally worth it. And the funny thing is like, I I'm really bad about getting on my phone right when I wake up, so I got like one eye open. I'm scrolling on TikTok, and that's the first video that comes up on my timeline. So I'm just like crying just a little bit in that moment. I mean, look how young he looks. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, a long time ago.
What was amazing to me is you had the incredible moments in Kirby Smart's career, holding up 2 national championship trophies. You look at the boom at the end of the Rose Bowl. All of these great moments. And this one's in there.
You're so right.
It is one of the, that has become one of his things now. And so the fact that was in there made it for me.
I have a stat of I have a stat of the day, but I'm going to save it for a game day preview for Saturday.
Ooh.
Because it was triggered by Cody mentioning how young Kirby is there. I have a stat of the day coming up. It is very timely. There was a big media release this week of a certain property. We'll touch on that on the DawgNation pregame show for Saturday.
What a selfless move by Connor to save it for the show on Saturday. That's huge. All right, so I thought that video, Kirby Smart, would be a good lead into our fun segment because he's actually going to make an appearance on the show, not in person. We're not that cool. I don't even think that's allowed to happen. So we're going to do that here in just a moment. With every week, Georgia and Georgia Tech looms closer and closer. I feel like I've had to talk about it so much.
The media's, premier Georgia Tech tout. She saw the vision before the year, and I'm pointing at you.
Oh,
it's gonna be a big week for you because you're gonna have to back your Yellow Jackets that week while they take on the Georgia Bulldogs.
Well, listen, this is not the point of this. You got to get tickets now. Prices are going up every single day. It is now looking like it's going to become one of the most important games in the history of Georgia and Georgia Tech. It's definitely one that you are going to want to be there to experience. Don't procrastinate it anymore. Go ahead and get your tickets at mercedes-benzstadium.com/events. Oh, I'm so excited for this. We've been holding on to this footage for quite some time now. So we are going to do something with Kirby Smart, and it is called Name That Dawg.
Name That Dawg!
So each year at the Dog Bowl, I get 5 minutes with Kirby Smart, and this year I decided I'm going to get in my bag. I'm going to basically give him no other option. Might as well have some fun with the interview during bye week. So let's go back to the Dog Bowl from this past week where I played Name That Dawg with Kirby Smart. I'm going to give you a scenario. You're going to name the dog that you closely associate with that. So we'll do an example.
Are dogs former players or dogs?
Let's do current ones.
Let's
do current ones. It'll be fun. You got it. All right. It's bye week. Let's say that you and Mary Beth are going away for the weekend. Name that dog that you would trust to babysit your kids while you're gone.
I think I would take Gunner Stockton or London Humphreys.
I know you have your famous mic'd up moments, but let's say you had music at practice for the week. Name that dog you would trust to have the aux for an entire week at practice.
Jordan Hall or Christian Miller. Christian Miller believes in White Boy Wednesdays, so he plays good tunes on every day.
I feel like you could also apply Christian Miller to this next one. The SEC has just announced a stand-up comedy tournament. You got to send your best guy out there to compete. Name that dog that you think is probably the funniest guy on the team.
Wow. I don't know that we got anybody funny. Brett Thorson.
All right, let's say you've been kidnapped. We're going to assume it's Tennessee fans. They're holding you hostage, and they say the only way that they're going to let you go is if you call a player that's going to answer on the first ring. Could you name that dog?
Woo, who's going to answer on the first ring? I'm going to say Zach Branch because he's always on his phone.
We'll go opposite end of that. Now they're not going to let you go until you call somebody who doesn't answer. Name that dog.
Jonell Aguero. Never answers his phone.
Name that dog you think is going to make a good coach one day.
A good coach one day?
Mm-hmm.
I think I would probably go with, so many coaches' kids on our teams.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like Drew Bobo would get it.
We've got 2 more, and then I'll let you go. They are making a movie about your life. Name that dog that you think would play you.
Robert Redford. It's got to be a dog?
It's got to be a dog. Robert Redford's a good answer, though.
Yeah,
I see it. I see the vision.
Everybody tells me Cole Spear because me and Cole Spear look alike, so probably be Cole Spear.
Have you ever seen the movie Freaky Friday? I know you're not really like a pop culture guy.
I don't know what that is.
The concept of the movie is you and one player are going to switch bodies for the entire day. Name that dog that you could be them for a whole day.
I'd be in their body?
Yeah, you get to be them for the whole day, but in turn, they're also going to be you.
I think I would be Juan Gaston so I could see what it feels like to be 360, and then he could see what it feels like to be like 220, and maybe we could switch off a little bit.
I want you next year. I just want you to explain like movie plots and movie devices to Kirby Smart. You explaining Freaky Friday and him going with the like we switched mind was just like such a mind-blowing concept to him. I want to see that next year at the Dog Bowl.
The saddest part about it is when I asked him the one about who would play him in the movie, and he said Robert Redford. In that moment, I was like, he doesn't know that he's dead, and I didn't have the heart to tell him. I couldn't be the one to do it. So let me just preface this by saying I did know as soon as he said that, but like I wasn't gonna waste any time I had in that interview telling him this.
No shot. He knew that Robert Redford unfortunately recently passed away.
I told him whenever we got done with the interview, I was like, I feel like somebody who could also play you really well, just because he's been in the program for so long, is Cash Jones.
See, Cash has the mustache, and he'd have to trim his hair a little bit. Like Cole Spear is so perfect.
It makes total sense, too, that he would have to get a Cole Spear mention.
Now, you know, the difference, though, Cole Spear is a North Georgia boy, whereas Kirby is as South Georgia gets. So,
any other answers that he gave that surprised you?
You know, he was very, you know, he searched a little bit for the Zagoria Branch answer in terms of who answers their phone first and gave a witty answer. He said Janelle Aguero and didn't say much after that. That leads me to believe that there's something there where they were trying to get in touch with Jonelle at a certain point and could not. And he was a little bit more forthcoming with Jonelle there in that instance.
I mean, literally didn't even think twice about it. There's got to be a story there. Maybe when we get Janelle in like a senior day or a combine scenario, we're going to show him that clip and be like, just go ahead and tell us.
Yeah.
So we are going to do touchdown predictions, but Cody, do you have anything that you want to add?
No, I was very surprised in hearing all of that from Kirby. The fact that he could have a little fun, but yes, I do think that the fact that he knows no pop culture, like the Wrecking Ball thing came up a couple of years ago, and like he was like, "Whoa, what is this song with Miley?" And sometimes I think he's like he's exaggerating that he doesn't know. Like, who doesn't know Freaky Friday? But I guess apparently he didn't.
But like you said, though, next year it's just me describing movie plots and him taking his best guess.
Yep.
All right, touchdown predictions. There were so many touchdowns in the Ole Miss game, and I regret to inform you guys, none of us got one.
You know, the thing is, though, like Lawson Lucky had 3 touchdowns, and so that really soaked up a lot. I thought about giving Nate Frazier, but ultimately, you know, he gets into the end zone. Great for Nate. You're thrilled to see that, and you can see how much that meant to him. I'd just like to point out now that, you know, as many correct touchdown predictions as I have, a guy that I has picked has left the game in the first quarter and has not returned. I had Nate Frazier to the Alabama game, and then Colby Young getting hurt on the 3rd play of the game against Ole Miss. That was tough.
We're gonna need you to start picking players that don't play.
It's you know, if it happens again, I think that I just have to take it for the team.
Yeah, at some point you have to ask yourself, am I the problem?
Yeah.
Who did I take last week?
You had a running back. You did not. I went through these right before.
Did you take Josh McCray?
I took Josh McCray. I want to say that you took...
I feel like Cody may have taken Nate Frazier. There's a part of me that feels like that is a possibility.
It was so long ago now.
I know.
It was.
I had to go back and watch it beforehand. Either way, if that's true, we can go back and revise this. Yeah. Cody would still be in the lead.
He'd have a commanding 2-game lead.
This is true. Who am I missing?
I think Cody did have Nate Frazier.
Nate Frazier didn't have a touchdown?
Yes, he did. He had
a receiving touchdown.
It was a receiving touchdown. Okay, that's what it was. I was just looking for rushing touchdowns. Okay, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Cody now leads by 2, so really it's just like who's not going to be in last place. So it actually works out because Cody, you get to go first this week.
All right, so I think they got to try and even it out. Lawson had so many touchdowns last time. I'm going to go Delpy this time.
That's a good one.
All right, I'm just going for the layup so that way I can just hopefully surpass Connor. Give me Gunner Stockton rushing touchdown.
All right. Is that your first time this year taking Gunner Stockton rushing touchdown?
I believe it is.
Okay. I can't believe I get this. I don't think I've called for him to get a touchdown this year. I'm going to take Chauncey Bowens.
Oh.
I'm going to go Florida connection, easy one right there.
That's a good one.
Just try and get on the board. I think Gunner rushing is a great one, but I've already used that once, and I don't want to. And if I really need to start making up ground, I want to have that for the Texas game, the Georgia Tech game as well.
All right, so Cody has taken Oscar Delp. I've taken a Gunnar Stockton rushing touchdown. Connor has taken Chauncey Bowens, and that is our touchdown predictions. I will update the graphic because Cody now leads by 2. So Connor did mention he's going to be saving his stat of the day for our DawgNation Game Day show, which is going to take place Saturday at 1:30. It'll be myself and Jeff Santel. We'll also have Cody be a part of it, and then Connor will join us as well. A lot of nostalgia is going to be involved in that since it's the last one in Jacksonville for the next 2 years. So definitely really going all in on that and just talking about maybe some of the stars that emerge and seeing what this Georgia team fixed over the course of the bye week, if there was anything they could fix at this point in time. So that's going to be Saturday at 1:30. Make sure to join us. And if you watch on YouTube, then go ahead and subscribe to our DawgNation YouTube page and ring that bell. That way you get notified anytime that we go live. And it'll be a good reminder for DawgNation Game Day. And we can hear Connor's stat of the day, which now he's really hyped it up. So I'm excited to hear it. Okay, so I know that we kind of did this with Alabama. Is there any memory that stands out to you about this Georgia-Florida rivalry?
Yeah, it's a bit of a story, so just buckle in. In 2015, I had learned that Wednesday that Faton Bada would be starting that week. And I kid you not, I went home to my roommate at the time, one of my best friends, Brandon, and I told, and this is a time when gambling was much more difficult in figuring out. I was like, we got to figure out a way to bet on Florida in this game because at the time they were still an underdog. And I was like, if Faton Bada starts this game, Georgia is absolutely losing. And sure enough, they roll Faton Bada out there. He throws 4 interceptions. Georgia loses 27-3. I think I wrote after that game the best thing that I had ever written in college because I couldn't believe that they had played that poorly and that this season had just sunk to the level it had sunk. But so, game starts at 3:30. It ends roughly around 7:30. And originally I was planning on staying in my brother's, because my brother attended Georgia Southern at the time. I was planning on staying in Statesboro. I was so annoyed and mad of everything that I had to jump through to get down to Jacksonville to cover the game. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to send it fully and try and get back to Athens. And I made the full 6-hour drive from Jacksonville to Athens immediately after the game. I do not recommend it. The last hour, especially when you're going from Jacksonville to Athens, it's very backroadsy. It was a biblical storm. I am like full white knuckling it at 25 miles an hour. I got home so late because it was the same time once again as when they do the fall back because daylight saving, which starts on Sunday. To make sure you set your clocks when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
That I got back so late. I got back to Athens after the time had changed. And so it was really, I got home essentially at like 3 a.m., but it was really like just after 2 a.m. Just an all-time, I can't believe they played that poorly. Just pure anger, rage drive from Jacksonville to Athens.
There is no better driving motivator than anger or annoyance. Yep. I have done this in a different scenario where I'm driving home.
Yep.
Okay, I don't really have like one kind of memory that sticks out in the back of my mind, but I will say that this is my 3rd year covering this team. I had never been to Georgia, Florida before this, and so that first year of covering this team, Georgia, Florida instantly became my favorite game to go to. It is the one that I look forward to, just getting to hang out with everyone, especially the Jacksonville Bulldog Club like we get to do every year. Like, it's just good vibes all around, and I know that the rivalry is really intense, but I just feel like everyone is pretty welcoming for the most part. Everyone's just there to have a good time, and I think the neutral site's really cool, and it's something that's really special, so I'm just excited to go back one more time before it switches over and really just soak all of it in and embrace being in Jacksonville for the last time for the next 2-3 years. Okay. That's DawgNation at large. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have more next week for Mississippi State week. So make sure to join us right back here next Thursday, 7 o'clock. You guys have a happy Halloween.